Okay, 8th graders, so what we are going to do today is section 1.7, simplifying expressions. We are going to review the different properties that actually allow us to simplify expressions. And these are lots of things that you guys have known and been practicing since you were young. We're just kind of putting a name to them. I know you did this before, so we're just going to review. The commutative property tells us that we can add numbers in any order, and we can also multiply numbers in any order, but only with addition and multiplication. This does not work with division or subtraction. The associative property tells us that we can group numbers to add them or multiply them, and it's not going to change our answer as long as it's solely addition or solely multiplication. And then the last property here that we're going to talk about is the distributive property, and that's when you can multiply a number by a sum, or you can multiply each number and then add them. The result will come out the same. So I'm going to show you how these examples work. So the first two examples, they want you to simplify using the commutative and the associative property. So when I look at this, in my head, it's going to be easier if I do some rearranging. And the reason that is, and so I just use the commutative property because I rearranged them. Now I'm going to use the associative property, and I'm going to say that I'm going to do these two operations first. Now that was the associative property. And why did I choose to do those two first? And I know I didn't leave you guys much room here, but what's 4 times 25? Well, it's 100. And what's 100 times 9? 900. So maybe I'll just do a little arrow here. 100 times 9 equals 900. Sorry for the not much space. So again, on the next one, I'm going to start and I'm going to rearrange. So I could take, and I could do it 48 plus 75 plus 25. I just exercised the commutative property. Commutative. And then I can do, and I know these, like I said, these are things that you guys kind of do in your head. It's not necessarily you need to write the whole thing out, but we are practicing them today. And then lastly, we're going to actually do that. So 75 and 25 is 100. And then you can just add that 48, so we get 148. Okay, so now the distributive property, and this is actually something that since I've been teaching it, I do it quite a bit in my head when I'm doing math. So what they say is that if you have a number, you can take it and you can split it into two numbers that add up to the same thing. So for example, 103. So when you use a distributive property, you take 15 times 100. And then you add it to 15 times 3. Now the reason why we do this is because I could do both of these multiplication problems in my head. So 15 times 100 is 1500. 15 times 3 is 45. So my answer is 1545. And I didn't need a calculator. Okay, so the next one here. Sometimes it's easier to not go like 10 plus 9, but it's easier to take 20 minus 1. So if I did that, 6 times 20 minus 6 times 1. So 6 times 20 would be 120. 6 times 1 is 6. So what's 120 minus 6, excuse me, 114. Okay, my next one. So I want you guys think about what could 52. So in my head, I would like to do 50 and 2. And when I decide how to split this up, a lot of times I'm thinking like, what can I multiply 9 by? Anything with a 0 is nicer because 9 times 5 is 45, and then you just add that 0. So 9 times 5 is 45, and then add the 0. 9 times 2 is 18. So 450 plus 18, 468. Okay, the next one, I would do 12 times, and to get to 98, I would take 100 minus 2. So 12 times 100 is 1200. 12 times 2 is 24. Now that one is a little bit harder, you know, 1200 minus 24. What I like to try to think of when I'm trying to do this in my head is, what's 1200 minus 25? Well, it's 1175, but it's actually going to be 1176 since we only subtracted 24. Okay. So combining like terms, when you combine like terms, they have to have the same variable raised to the same power. Same exponent, I'll say. So for example, these both have x's, so 12 plus 30 is 42x. The next one, they both have y squared. If there's no coefficient in front of the y, you just put a 1. So 6.8y squared plus 1y squared is 7.8y squared. You go over here. Now 4n and 11n squared, they are not the same. One has an n and one has an n squared. So you can't do anything. This is just your answer. The last one here is a subtraction. Negative 20t minus 8.5t, you add the opposite. So now it's negative 20t plus negative 8.5t. So it's a negative 28.5t. And that's your answer. Since they both had t's, you could combine them. Okay. Now, these problems, you need to show all of your work and you need to justify every step. You're going to justify each step with either telling me what property you used and or what operation occurred. So for example, in this first one, the first thing that you're going to do is follow order of operations. Order of operations tells us to do the parentheses, but I can't take x plus 6, so I need to distribute. So my first is 2 times x plus 2 times 6 plus 3x. So this property that I just did was called the distributive property. So I'm going to label it on that line. Okay. Now the next thing I'm going to do is just going to multiply this out. So 2x plus 12 plus 3x. So that was just multiplying. Then I'm going to rearrange 2x plus 3x plus 12. So which property tells me that I can rearrange? That's the commutative. Okay. And then I'm going to take and I'm going to combine like terms. Since it's going left to right, I can just do it. I don't need to use the associative, and that would be combine like terms. CLT, we'll call it that. Save you guys some writing. And then this is your answer. Okay, so the next one is very similar. So I'm going to distribute first. So 6 times x minus 6 times 4 plus 9. Property. Okay, and then my next thing is I'm just going to multiply. So I multiplied. And then what happens here is I'm going to throw, I don't have to move anything around. I'm going to do, when you have a minus, sometimes that gets tricky. So I'm going to add the opposite. And I'm going to add some parentheses in here. So this is the associative property. Now I can do that operation first. So the 6x isn't touched, but negative 24 plus 9 is going to give you a negative 15. And that's your answer. So that one was simple addition or subtraction. Okay. Last one here. This one doesn't have any distributing, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to rearrange it. 12x minus 5x plus x plus 3a. So that was the commutative property. Okay, and then I'm going to do that operation. So negative 12 minus 5 gives you a negative 17. Negative 17 plus x, negative 16x plus 3a. That was my combined like terms. So I just need you guys to show all of your steps and to justify them, and we will do some more practice with those.